starts as a flicker, barely noticeable. A pale yellow glow behind the cracked second-floor window of 1478 Oakwood Drive. The Robinson house. Empty for 6 years now. Or at least, it's supposed to be. I've documented it for months. The light appears precisely at 3:33 a.m., burns for exactly 7 minutes, then vanishes. No cars in the driveway, no footprints in the snow-covered lawn. No one has paid property taxes since 2019. The realtor's sign collapsed years ago, now half buried in overgrown weeds. But every night, that light. Always the same window. Always the same time. Last week, I finally decided to find out why. Let me back up a bit. My name is Daniel Kelly. I've lived at 1476 Oakwood Drive for almost a decade now. The Robinsons were already living next door when I moved in. Thomas, Elizabeth, and their teenage daughter, Amelia. They seemed normal enough. Thomas worked in finance. Elizabeth taught piano lessons from their living room. Amelia was quiet, kept to herself mostly. We weren't close. Just the occasional wave, small talk about the weather, maybe borrowing a cup of sugar once in a blue moon. Nothing that would suggest the strange events that would later unfold. It was a Tuesday morning in March 2019 when I realized something was off. The Robinsons' car, usually gone by 7:30 a.m., was still in the driveway. The next day, same thing. By Friday, I noticed their mail was piling up. I knocked on their door, no answer. Called the local police for a wellness check. They found nothing concerning. No signs of forced entry, no evidence of violence. Just an empty house with breakfast still on the table, keys on the hook, and the TV still on. The official story became that the Robinsons had left suddenly to care for a sick relative. That's what the neighbors whispered at first. Then, as weeks turned to months, the story evolved. Financial troubles, witness protection, secret identities exposed. The rumors grew wilder as the house sat there, frozen in time. Eventually, the police investigation closed. No crime had been committed. Adults have the right to disappear if they want to. The case of the vanishing Robinsons became local legend. The kind of story parents use to keep their kids from wandering too far from home. For years, that house just sat there. The bank never foreclosed. Some legal complication with the mortgage that no one quite understood. The city would occasionally cite the property for code violations, send workers to mow the lawn when it got too unruly. But otherwise, 1478 Oakwood Drive became a monument to abandonment. I thought about the Robinsons less and less as time passed. Life moved on. I got promoted, dated, broke up, adopted a cat named Jasper. The empty house next door became part of the landscape, like the old oak tree at the end of the street, or the perpetually potholed intersection a block away. That changed on October 17th of last year. I was up late working on a deadline project. Insomnia has always been my unwelcome companion. At precisely 3:33 a.m., movement caught my eye through my home office window. A light had turned on next door, in what I knew to be Amelia's old bedroom. My first thought was squatters. It happens in abandoned properties. I called the non-emergency police line. They sent a car about an hour later, did a perimeter check, found all doors and windows secure. No sign of entry. The light was off by the time they arrived, of course. Probably just an electrical issue, the officers suggested. Old wiring can do funny things in these houses. I accepted that explanation. Until it happened again the next night, and the next. Always at 3:33 a.m. Always for exactly 7 minutes. Always in Amelia's room. After 2 weeks of this predictable light show, I began keeping a log. I set up my phone on a tripod in my spare bedroom window, recording the Robinson house from 3:30 to 3:45 a.m. every night. The pattern never varied. Light on at 3:33 a.m., light off at 3:40 a.m. No movement visible inside, no shadows passing by the window, just the light. I reviewed the footage obsessively, looking for any detail I might have missed. Sometimes I thought I saw a flicker of movement behind the thin curtains, but it was probably just my imagination, my brain desperately searching for patterns and randomness. The consistent timing bothered me the most. If it were an electrical issue, wouldn't it be more sporadic? A timer, perhaps? But who would set a timer in an abandoned house? And why 3:33 a.m. specifically? I began researching. First about electrical phenomena in empty houses, then about the significance of 3:33 a.m. I found countless references to the witching hour, or devil's hour, traditionally between 3 and 4 a.m., when supernatural activity is said to peak. In paranormal circles, 3:33 specifically is considered significant, the mockery of the Holy Trinity doubled. I'm not a superstitious person. I've always prided myself on rational thinking, but night after night of watching that light, perfectly timed, began to wear on me. I started waking up naturally, just before 3:33, as if my body had internalized the schedule. My dreams filled with images of the Robinson family, standing motionless in that upstairs bedroom, staring out at me. By December, I had 3 theories. First, and most rational, some kind of timer device connected to the house's electrical system, perhaps set up by the Robinsons before they left for reasons I couldn't fathom. Second, someone was entering the house nightly, somehow avoiding detection, turning on the light for precisely 7 minutes, then leaving. Third, something supernatural. I hesitated to even acknowledge this possibility, but after months of observation, it became harder to dismiss. I needed more information. Public records were my first stop. I dug through property records, newspaper archives, and old police reports. Nothing unusual about the house before the Robinsons. Built in 1972, 3 previous owners, no reported deaths on the property, no significant criminal incidents. The Robinsons themselves were equally unremarkable on paper. Thomas worked at First National Bank for 15 years. Elizabeth had a music degree from State University. Amelia was an honor roll student at the local high school. No criminal records, no history of mental illness, no significant debt beyond their mortgage, perfect credit scores. They had simply vanished. I found their family members next. Thomas had a brother in Colorado who claimed they hadn't spoken in years due to some old family dispute. Elizabeth's parents had both passed away before the disappearance. No siblings on her side. The trail was frustratingly cold. Then came the electricity bills. It took some doing, and perhaps some minor privacy violations I'm not proud of, but I managed to access the utility records for 1478 Oakwood Drive. The electricity was still on. Minimum usage charged monthly to an automatic payment from a still active checking account. But here was the strange part. Every month, there was a small spike in usage. Not much, equivalent to running a few light bulbs for about 3 hours. The spikes corresponded exactly to the dates I'd been observing the light. By January, my curiosity had transformed into obsession. I wasn't sleeping well. My work was suffering. My friends stopped calling after I canceled plans one too many times, always with vague excuses about a project I'm working on. I needed to get closer. Observing from my window wasn't yielding new information. So one night at 3:15 a.m., I positioned myself behind the large oak tree in my front yard, camera in hand, direct line of sight to Amelia's window. The bitter cold bit through my jacket as I waited. Breath-forming clouds in the January air. At precisely 3:33, the light flickered on. From this angle, I could see more clearly into the room. The curtains were thinner than they appeared from my house. I zoomed in with my camera, adjusting the focus. The room appeared empty at first. Glance, just a teenage girl's bedroom frozen in time. Posters on the wall, a desk with a closed laptop, a neatly made bed with purple bedding. Wait. The bed. I could have sworn I saw movement. I zoomed in further, the image becoming grainier. Was that an impression on the bedspread? As if someone was sitting there, creating a slight depression in the mattress. I snapped photos rapidly, my fingers growing numb from the cold. And then I saw it, not in the room, but reflected in the mirror hanging on Amelia's wall. A face, pale, expressionless. Not quite Amelia, but similar. Younger, maybe. Watching me. I dropped my camera, the strap catching it before it hit the ground. When I looked back up, the face was gone. At exactly 3:40 a.m., the light turned off. The scene, photos when I reviewed them later showed nothing. Just an empty room. No face in the mirror, no impression on the bed. Had I imagined it? Sleep deprivation can cause hallucinations, I reminded myself. But I knew what I'd seen. The next night, I tried again. This time with a better camera, a thermos of coffee, and a determination to document whatever might appear. Same result. Light. On at 3:33, off at 3:40. But no face, no movement, nothing in the photos. For a week straight, I maintained my vigil. Sometimes from behind the tree, sometimes from my car parked across the street, once even from the Robinsons' own backyard, as close as I dared to get to the house itself. It was during that backyard observation that I noticed something I'd missed from my other vantage points. A soft blue glow emanating from the basement windows, visible only when standing at certain angles. Unlike the yellow light in Amelia's room, this blue illumination was constant, though much dimmer. I needed to get inside that house. The legal options were limited. I couldn't claim emergency entry. Nothing suggested immediate danger. Breaking in would be criminal trespassing at minimum. I considered contacting the bank that held the mortgage, posing as a potential buyer, but the paper trail would lead back to me if anything went wrong. Then I remembered Mrs. Peterson, 3 doors down. The neighborhood gossip had once mentioned she'd watered the Robinsons' plants when they went on vacation. Perhaps she had a key. It took some convincing, and a fabricated story about a water leak potentially affecting my foundation. But eventually, Mrs. Peterson reluctantly handed over the spare key she'd kept, just in case they ever came back. Such a shame about that family, she said, her eyes downcast, especially after what happened with their first daughter. I froze. First daughter? I froze. First daughter? Mrs. Peterson looked confused. Yes, before Amelia. They lost a child when they lived in their previous home. Terrible accident. The poor girl would have been about 6 when they moved here. They never talked about her, of course. Too painful, I imagine. I thanked Mrs. Peterson and left quickly, my mind racing. In all my research, I'd never found any mention of another Robinson child. I waited 3 days before using the key. Part of me hoped I'd discover a mundane explanation for the lights. Faulty wiring, a timer, anything normal. Another part feared what I might actually find. On a Friday night, I waited until after midnight. The street was silent, most houses. Dark. I wore black clothes, gloves, and carried only my phone and a small flashlight. The key turned smoothly in the lock of the Robinsons' back door. The air inside was stale, but not unpleasant. No musty odor of decay or abandonment, which struck me as odd for a house empty 6 years. It smelled faintly of lemon furniture polish. The kitchen was immaculate. Dishes put away, counters clean, not even dust on the surfaces. It looked as if the family might return any minute. I moved through the first floor carefully, avoiding windows where possible. The living room contained a piano, sheet music still open to Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat major. The dining room table was set for Hermos 4, though the Robinsons were a family of 3. Everything was unnaturally preserved, like a museum exhibit. No dust, no cobwebs, no signs of rodents or insects that typically invade abandoned properties. I found the basement door under the stairs and hesitated before opening it. The blue glow I'd seen from outside, this would be its source. My hand trembled slightly as I turned the knob. The stairs creaked as I descended. The blue light grew stronger with each step, emanating from behind a door at the bottom of the stairs. A room I hadn't known existed from my external observations of the house. The door wasn't locked. Inside was what appeared to be a home office. A desktop computer hummed quietly, its screen the source of the blue light. It displayed a screensaver, swirling patterns of stars and nebulae. I touched the mouse, and the screensaver dissolved. A program was running, lines of code scrolling automatically, too fast to read. In the corner of the screen, a digital clock displayed 3:17 a.m. I checked my phone, 12:42 a.m. The computer clock was nearly 3 hours ahead. On the desk beside the computer sat 5 identical journals, neatly labeled by year, starting from 2018. I opened the first one, flipping to a random page. Day 174. Sequence stable. Amelia's sleep patterns normal. No manifestation. Page after page of similar entries. Clinical. Detached. Occasionally a more personal note. Elizabeth concerned about noise from the attic. Told her it was raccoons. Increased her dose to 2.5 mg. The final entry in the 2019 journal, dated just before the Robinsons' disappearance. Breakthrough achieved. Full manifestation at 3:33. Protocol requires immediate relocation. Will continue observation remotely. God forgive me for what I've done. The computer dinged, displaying a notification. Sequence initiating in 15 minutes. The clock on screen read 3:18 a.m. I needed to see Amelia's room before 3:33. Taking the journals, I hurried back upstairs and found my way to the second floor. 4 doors lined the hallway. The master bedroom was first, pristine, bed made, clothes still hanging. In the closet, a bathroom next, towels neatly folded on the rack. The third door was locked. The fourth opened to Amelia's bedroom, just as I'd seen from outside. Purple bedspread, desk with laptop, posters of bands I didn't recognize. A typical teenager's room, yet impossibly clean for being abandoned 6 years. On her nightstand sat a framed photo I couldn't see from my outside vantage point. It showed the Robinson family, Thomas, Elizabeth, Amelia, and another child. A younger girl, perhaps 6 years old, with the same eyes as Amelia, but somehow different. Wrong. The girl's face was slightly blurred, as if she'd moved during the photo, but the rest of the family was in perfect focus. I checked my phone. 3:28 a.m. according to the house computer's time, 5 minutes until the light would come on. I positioned myself in the corner of the room, partly hidden by a bookshelf, and waited. At precisely 3:33 a.m., the bedroom light turned on by itself. The room temperature dropped suddenly, my breath visible in the now frigid air. The locked door down the hall began to rattle. Then she appeared. Not gradually like mist forming, but instantly, as if she'd always been there and I simply hadn't seen her. A young girl, perhaps 6 years old, sitting on Amelia's bed. The girl from the photograph, only more solid now, more real. She didn't acknowledge my presence at first. She simply sat, staring at the locked door down the hall, rocking slightly. Then without turning, she spoke. "You shouldn't be here when he comes." Her voice was clear like glass bells, yet somehow distant. I remained frozen in the corner, unable to move, unable to speak. "He'll be angry," she continued. "He doesn't like witnesses." "Who?" I finally managed to whisper. "Who's coming?" She turned then, her eyes meeting mine. They were wrong. Too old, too knowing for her young face. My father. He thinks he can make it right, but he can't. Some things, once broken, stay broken. She pointed to the journals I was clutching. "You found his records. You know what he did." I didn't fully understand, but pieces were falling into place. Thomas Robinson, the grieving father, attempting something unnatural. The lost daughter. The experiments. "What's your name?" I asked softly. "Sarah," she replied. "I died when I was 6. Car accident. Dad was driving." The locked door down the DI hall rattled more violently. "He couldn't accept it," Sarah continued. "He's a quantum physicist, did you know that? Not a banker. That was just his cover. He discovered a way to create temporary bridges between parallel realities. He found a reality where I didn't die, where I grew up to be 12. He thought he could bring that version of me here, make me whole again." The rattling stopped. Footsteps approached down the hall. "But you can't merge realities without consequences. The Sarah he brought through wasn't me, wasn't whole, just a fragment, unstable. I'm what's left of her consciousness, looped in this temporal sequence he created. Every night, the program runs. Every night, I exist for 7 minutes." The doorknob to Amelia's room began to turn. "Where is your family now?" I asked urgently. "Gone. They fled when the experiment collapsed. The other realities were becoming too unstable, bleeding through. Amelia started seeing things that weren't there, that shouldn't be there. Mom was losing time, finding herself in rooms with no memory of entering them. The door swung open. The hallway beyond was impossibly dark. Dad monitors remotely, keeps the program running, keeps trying to perfect the sequence. He thinks he can still save me." Her voice grew softer. "You need to leave. Now. Before." From the darkness of the hallway emerged a figure, not fully human. Thomas Robinson's face distorted, stretched, as if viewed through warped glass. Behind him, glimpses of other realities. Landscapes that shouldn't exist. Physics bent and broken. "Who are you?" The voice was Thomas's, but layered with other sounds, other voices. "How did you get in here?" I backed toward the window. Journals, clutched to my chest. "I'm your neighbor. I saw the lights." Thomas's distorted face registered confusion, then understanding, then rage. "The sequence is private, sacred. You have no right." He moved toward me, his movements jerky, unnatural. Behind him, the darkness of the hallway swirled, deepened. Sarah suddenly stood between us. "Dad, stop. You're breaking more than you're fixing." Thomas froze, his rage instantly replaced by heartbreaking tenderness. "Sarah? You're communicating? This is breakthrough. The consciousness transfer is finally—" "I'm not your Sarah," she interrupted sadly. "I'm just an echo, a memory of a parallel possibility. What you're doing is wrong." The room began to distort around us, reality bending. The walls breathed. Time seemed to stutter. Thomas looked at his watch, a complex device unlike anything I'd seen before. No, the sequence is destabilizing. Too many conscious observers." He looked at me with hatred. "You've ruined years of work." He lunged toward me, but his form scattered like smoke when he reached me, reforming a few feet away. The house groaned around us, wood splintering somewhere below. "Dad," Sarah said firmly, "let go. Turn off the machine. Let me rest." For a moment, humanity returned to Thomas's distorted features. Grief, acceptance, love. "I can't," he whispered. "You're all I have left." "Then you have nothing," Sarah replied, "because I'm not real." The light began to flicker. 3:40 a.m. approached. "Go," Sarah told me urgently. "The program is collapsing. The bridge between realities is breaking down." I didn't need to be told twice. I ran, stumbling down the stairs as the house warped around me. Photos on the walls showed the Robinson family in impossible configurations. 4, members 3, 5, none. Different ages, different times, all existing simultaneously. I burst through the front door at exactly 3:40 a.m. Behind me, the light in Amelia's room went out. I didn't sleep that night. How could I? I sat at my kitchen table reading through Thomas Robinson's journals until dawn broke. The technical details were beyond my comprehension. Quantum entanglement, parallel timeline manipulation, consciousness, transference. But the human story was clear enough. Thomas Robinson, brilliant physicist, working for a secret government research division. A tragic accident taking his youngest daughter. A father's grief twisting his scientific genius toward the impossible, bringing back the dead. Not through traditional resurrection, but by replacing her with a version from another reality where she had lived. The consequences were catastrophic. Reality itself began breaking down around the Robinson house. Their older daughter Amelia starting seeing echoes, versions of herself from other timelines. Elizabeth experiencing lost time, personality shifts, the fabric of their existence unraveling. The final entries detailed Thomas's solution: maintain a controlled tear in reality. A program running on a specialized quantum computer, creating a stable pocket dimension within the house where a version of Sarah could exist for exactly 7 minutes each night. The family would relocate, monitor remotely, until Thomas could perfect a permanent solution. That was 6 years ago. For 3 days after my experience in the Robinson house, nothing happened. No light at 3:33 a.m. The house remained dark, silent. I wondered if my intrusion had somehow broken the sequence permanently. Then, last night, a knock at my door. 3:45 a.m. I knew before opening it who I would find. Thomas Robinson stood on my porch, looking exactly as he had 6 years ago when he disappeared. No distortion, no rage, just exhaustion and defeat in his eyes. "You have my journals," he said simply. I invited him in. What else could I do? He sat at my kitchen table, hands trembling slightly, as I handed over the 5 notebooks. "You've seen her," he stated. "Yes." "Then, you understand why I couldn't stop, why I still can't." I didn't respond. What could I say to a man who had broken reality itself for love of his daughter? "The program is beyond repair now," he continued. "Your presence in the sequence that night created too many variables. The quantum coherence collapsed." He sounded almost relieved. "Sarah's consciousness can finally disperse naturally. She can rest." "What about you? Your family?" I asked. Thomas smiled sadly. "Elizabeth and Amelia are safe. New identities, new lives free from my obsession. They're better without me." He stood to leave. "The house is yours if you want it. Consider it payment for setting my daughter free." He left the deed on my table. Legal. Notarized. The house next door now belonged to me. This morning I walked through 1478 Oakwood Drive in daylight for the first time. No distortions, no impossible physics. Just an ordinary, somewhat dusty, abandoned house. The basement office was empty, computer gone, no sign it had ever been there. Amelia's room was just a bedroom now, the purple bedspread faded from years of sunlight through the window. The previously locked door down the hall stood open, revealing a child's bedroom. Pink walls, stuffed animals arranged on a small bed. A shrine to Sarah Robinson, the daughter Thomas couldn't let go. I don't know if I'll keep the house. I don't know if I could ever sleep peacefully next door to where reality itself was torn open by grief. But I understand Thomas Robinson better than I would have thought possible. Love makes us do impossible things, terrible things, beautiful things. Outro, 90 words. Tonight at 3:33 a.m. I'll be watching. Not from behind trees or hidden corners, but from my window. One last time. I don't expect to see a light. The sequence is broken. The program terminated. Sarah Robinson is finally at rest. But part of me wonders, once reality is damaged, Can it ever truly be repaired? The boundary between what's possible and impossible has been blurred in my mind forever. All I know with certainty is this: grief is its own kind of haunting, stretching across time, across realities, searching endlessly for what it has lost.